Hi, welcome to Revenue Marketing Television, the CMO Insight Series. I am your host, Jeff Pedowitz, President and CEO of the Pedowitz Group. Today, we have Tracy Eiler, who is Chief Marketing Officer of InsideView. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, you and I were just having a great time catching up a little bit. Lots of changes going on in the world of data. So, could you tell us a little bit about InsideView, where you're at today, and then strategically where you guys are going over the next year or two?
Sure. InsideView focuses on serving B2B sales and marketing folks and their operations counterparts, and we provide them data, insights, and connections for their target markets. We have a variety of products, starting with our historical product that many people know as for InsideView Sales, which helps sellers really micro-target who they want to go after, and it gives them all kinds of information about those accounts and the people in them. But now we have a whole portfolio of products that help sellers and marketers really figure out their ideal customers, the total addressable market for those customers, and then their progress against it. One thing we're doing more and more as we head into the future is really helping companies with their entire data strategy around customer data, making sure that all the right accounts are identified and the people in them. But that, of course, is not a one-time thing, as you well know, Jeff, right? Data's like a river. You got to keep it refreshed. People come and go, etc. And especially as so many of us marketers and sellers are moving into an account-based or super targeted approach, having a really strong data strategy is becoming more and more important.
So, I'm interested in your take as a marketing executive because you've run several different organizations now over the last few years. How is marketing changing? Are you finding it needs to be run more like a business in 2017?
I definitely think that marketing needs to run more like a business. And I also think that the talent composition of who we need to recruit and train and mentor is changing. And I'll explain that. I have this notion that I'm playing around with in my head of the T-shaped marketer, like the capital T. When I used to build marketing teams, you would have a variety of disciplines in your marketing organization with really deep expertise. Like you might have your digital marketing expert and your events expert and your brand advertising expert and so on and so on. And I'm finding more and more because the disciplines are all sort of munging together. And this is true about sales and sales development or lead gen, whoever the folks are on the phone that are qualifying leads. These teams are starting to converge and our systems are converging, which I think is part of what's driving this transformation to running more like a business. Sales and marketing is a revenue center now. It's not marketing over here generating top of funnel leads and the sales guys over here, converting and going forward. Everything is much more designed around finding accounts, selling them, and then growing those businesses. A lot of that, I think, is the subscription economy. But I think a lot of it is we realize as marketers that we're way more profitable when we're selling more into our customer base. So constantly looking at the composition of net new, existing customers, what's my ASP, where are my upsell opportunities? And then to your point about becoming more like a business, when you really know your ideal customer profile, there is such a thing as good revenue and bad revenue. And the bad revenue is really nice right now, this quarter, but it doesn't renew and you never sell them anymore, right? So I think as business leaders, we are increasingly more and more kind of redesigning our teams around the idea of go after the good revenue, be proactive about picking those accounts, say no to companies that come knocking on your door wanting to buy your product that you know are not going to be profitable, send them elsewhere. Things of that nature. We never used to talk about that type of thing as CMOs.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because I think more marketers should spend time figuring out the right type of customers for their business. We actually just adopted a third-party account methodology called Clients for Life. And a big part of it is figuring out in the beginning who you should be aligned with and who you shouldn't, because there's a lot of early indicators in terms of what that's going to look like over time. So how does that translate then into your customer engagement philosophy? So you've picked the right customer, but how much of your mix is spent in the beginning getting the customer versus because you have multiple products? How much of your marketing mix is working with those customers over their lifetime?
The mix is really morphing to right now, I would say 2/3 of our effort is spent on growing existing customer accounts. and the rest is spent on net new logo development. And
That's
we
an
are,
interesting mix. Yeah, that's okay. Very heavy for the install base.
and it's very related to, you know, our maturity as a company and the size of our install base, but it's also related to our own analysis, knowing that there are certain types of accounts that are super, super profitable, where our product's very sticky. In InsideView's case, those customers are customers that have very high relationship selling and marketing motions. Commercial real estate is a good example. Financial services is another good example. Insurance is another example, where we get in with that customer and we became part of their go-to-market fabric. So we know that if we work with those accounts, get them to best practice as fast as possible. And marketing has a role to play there. It's not just our onboarding and customer success guys. Get them to best practice, get them to be advocates, you know, and then the virtuous circle continues. So, you know, I don't know if 2/3, 1/3 is going to be the composition 2 years from now. But I don't think it's going to be less than 50-50, you know, and in the old days, I would say, gosh, 80% of my time was spent on top of funnel net new logo acquisition. So I think it's really quite satisfying to see it morph. And of course, that's very related to the, you know, account-based everything phrase or craze, you know, that's going on. So I personally really enjoy it, figuring out how to get even more engaged with our customers. And to your point about customers for life, we know in our business that when we have relationships across sales, marketing, and operations, we're super sticky, as opposed to just entering in through one of those departments, which used to happen all the time. And as you know, people change all the time, right? So if you have all your eggs in the relationship basket with the CMO, for instance, she leaves 2 years later, what are you going to do? So making sure that you've got that breadth of relationship, you know, in multiple people in the company is really key.
So you mentioned earlier sales and marketing being a shared revenue center at InsideView. Is that what you're measured on by your boss? And then what do you measure your team on?
We are in marketing almost 100% measured on pipeline. And there's, of course, we look at lots of other measures, right? We're looking at net new leads and MQLs and all of those sorts of traditional things. But pipeline is really where we zero in. And then pipeline composition. How much of it is in our ideal customer profile set, how much of it is inbound or related to only one product, and so on. We're trying to get to the point where pipeline composition is almost all ICP industries, almost all multi-product, as an example. We've even set a floor in our small business, because we have a traditional kind of inbound-driven small business that's about 1/3 of our revenue, and then the rest is enterprise and OEM. And that small business now, we've set a floor, a minimum floor, deal size. And we're trying to figure out right now, how fast can we figure out whether that new lead will hit that floor so that we can qualify them out if they're not. And, you know, it's a great problem to have, but it's a whole super interesting new set of challenges. So pipeline is what we align around and we're measured on.
Okay, great. So what's your take on MarTech? Not enough, just right, too much, overwhelming? What do you think?
I'm frustrated and sick of the amount of marketing technology that is out there. And I think that we're starting to see, at least in my peer set, almost a backlash back towards the basics and back towards simplification. I know myself, when I came to InsideView 2.5 years ago, I took a look at our stack, Jeff, and we had, there was about 14 or 15 different technologies, and they're not cheap, right? They might be anywhere from, $10K to $80K annual ACV, not even including our marketing automation system in that mix. And not one person in the entire marketing organization could tell me everything that was in our stack and what it was for. Different people knew different things. And in some cases, they were just complete orphans, right? I remember this one particular tool that did something on the website to, change buttons, green or yellow, or, things like that. So if a visitor delayed, it would, proactively get them to do a behavior. Not one person in my team could tell me what it was for, who bought it, or anything. And then the $33,000 ACV renewal came across my desk. So we did a purge and took ourselves down to marketing automation and CRM and a massive, massive data cleanup in our sales and marketing database. And then we re-added some specific things to the mix. So I think there's way too much. I think it's way too confusing for marketers. And I also think that the bright, shiny object marketer is going out of vogue. We all know that person or people in the marketing team that, is always looking at the latest and greatest new thing, plays around with it, sticks it in a sandbox, and then, it may end up and get abandoned. They leave the company, and then you end up like me coming in, and there's just a whole bunch of crap that may or may not have ever been set up correctly. So I think marketers have to be back to basics. I think they got to focus on their core systems and their data, and then add the rest. But you got to be careful, and you have to be really judicious. And there's so much consolidation going on. You also have to be careful if, there's a product that you're putting in your stack that requires really intense hookup, and then that company ends up and gets acquired. Unhooking, can really be painful. So, vetting the vendor and the vendor stability and all of that, has taken on new meaning.
So from your perspective, and with this spirit in mind, what would be the top few processes you think marketing executives should be really focusing in on to build their foundation?
Processes. Well, I'll answer it slightly differently, which would be business problems that I think that marketers need to look at, if you don't mind. So one would be what is your business process and your technology for making sure your customers get to best practice and turning them into advocates. So, for instance, I'm a big fan of advocacy platforms like Influitive, happens to be the one that I have experience with, to get your customers to really be rabid fans in the B2B world. That's a whole body of work. Another one is all around sales enablement and sales productivity. And there's so many great tools out there now to help your sellers get up to speed faster, to orchestrate their work. And, my life partner is a VP of sales, and he always says, the only thing the sales reps control is their time. Everything else is out of control. So if you can make them more productive, decrease their research time, help them figure out their next best action, and so on, even better. And one of the best things we've done personally in the last couple of years is put in a sales content portal so that anybody that's customer facing always has the exact right piece of content. It's up to date, and they can track where it's going when they send it out to a prospect. They know who's opened it, who's clicked, and so on. And then I've got metrics now that say, okay, here's all my top sellers, here's their win rate, and here's what they're using day in and day out. And that's been really transformative in helping to make our sales force as productive as possible. Those are two things.
Yeah, that's great. So let's shift to talent for a minute. Do you think that there's a talent gap out there? And if so, why?
So I used to think that there was a very severe marketing operations talent gap. It's getting better, but I still think it exists. If you think about just people that can know the basics on implementing a marketing automation system, it's pretty hard to find that talent. That's why agencies are so important. Even though we have a full-time marketing ops person and demand gen team, we also outsource, to partners quite a lot of things to either get us jump started or, keep us going on a regular basis. You don't want to put all your eggs into one marketing ops basket and have that person leave and then nobody can run the keyboard. So I think that's, really an issue. And I think that we're starting to see universities address the issue of B2B marketing talent development. When I went to the University of Michigan and graduated in '88 with a sociology degree, there were no marketing choices for me that were not just consumer 4Ps, mass media communications. We're starting to see in a few different places in the country programs that are much more related to B2B sellers and more related to technology and data concepts and things like that. But I think we're behind, and it's mostly behind on things that are data and systems oriented. It's getting better, but there's a long way to go. And if you're in a business that's, in a city that is in the middle of the country, you're in Kansas City as an example. I was talking to one of our customers who recently bought Marketo. It was very hard for them to find experience with that platform in their city. And, that's where I think we, definitely have a problem with it being behind. And some of these vendors are doing a pretty good job with training and communities and things like that, but there's a way to go.
Yeah, great advice as always, Tracy. So unfortunately, we're out of time. I could probably do another 15-minute section with you easily. But thank you so much for being on the show this afternoon, and looking forward to tracking all the great things that are coming out of InsideView this year.
You're most welcome, and thank you guys at Pedowitz. You always have such great content, and I really appreciate you taking a leadership role there.
You bet. Thanks, Tracy.